fog thins over Blackthorn Lane, revealing Death Manor's turrets like accusing fingers. At 3:17 a.m., the grandfather clock strikes once and stops. Lord Blackthorn hangs crucified on its iron spike, inside a library bolted from within, windows barred since 1853. No footprints but his own the blood-soaked rug. A child's whisper drifts from the walls. "Papa, hungry, enter Hercule Poirot," summoned by a telegram soaked in impossibility. Clocks don't kill. Men do, but in this house, time itself conspires. One tick to unravel the lie, one spike to silence the truth. The raven watches. The game begins. Chapter 1. The Summons in the Fog. The train from Dover hissed into the station like a serpent exhaling its last breath, steam curling in ghostly tendrils around the iron wheels. Hercule Poirot, seated in the first-class compartment with the rigidity of a statue carved from Belgian granite, adjusted the precise angle of his Homburg upon his knees. The carriage lights flickered once, twice, then steadied, casting his reflection in the window. A small, impeccably dressed man with a moustache that might have been drawn by a geometrist, eyes green as absinthe and twice as sharp. In his gloved hand rested a telegram, its paper creased into perfect quarters. The message was brief, yet it carried the weight of a guillotine. Archibald impaled on clock. Library locked. Impossible. Come at once. Evelina Poirot folded the telegram once more, though it needed no further folding, and slipped it into the inner pocket of his Chesterfield coat. The word impossible lingered in his mind like the aftertaste of a fine cognac. Impossible? No, merely unobvious. Outside, the fog pressed against the glass with the insistence of a living thing. London's outskirts in November were a study in monochrome. Skeletal trees, soot-blackened brick, the occasional gas lamp struggling to assert its existence. The train lurched forward again, wheels screaming on the rails, and Poirot permitted himself a small, satisfied smile. England, with its damp and its drama, was a fertile ground for the little grey cells. He had been summoned by Evelina Blackthorn, widow, heiress, and if the society pages were to be believed, a woman of considerable beauty and even more considerable secrets. The name Blackthorn stirred memories. Old money, older scandals, a family crest featuring a raven impaled upon a clock hand. Fitting, given the circumstances. The journey to Blackthorn Lane required a change at a rural junction where the platform was deserted, save for a single porter who looked as though he had been carved from the same stone as the station itself. Poirot's carriage, a discreet Daimler sent by the Manor, awaited with engine purring. The chauffeur, a man with the build of a prizefighter and the silence of a Trappist monk, opened the door with a bow that managed to convey both deference and menace. As they wound through hedgerows and sunken lanes, the fog thickened until the headlights carved tunnels of yellow light that revealed nothing but more fog. Poirot consulted his pocket watch, 6:42 p.m., and noted that the journey from station to Manor should have taken 12 minutes. They had been driving for 23. Either the driver was lost, or the Manor was playing coy. At last, the car slowed. Iron gates loomed, flanked by stone griffins whose wings dripped moss like green blood. The gates swung inward with a groan that suggested centuries of reluctance. Beyond lay a gravel drive that crunched beneath the tires like the bones of small animals. Death Manor rose before them. A Gothic monstrosity of turrets and gargoyles, its windows glowing with the sickly yellow of gaslight. The name was not, as Poirot had initially assumed, a macabre jest, but rather the surname of its architect, Sir Mortimer Death, who had designed the house in 1847 and then promptly thrown himself from its highest tower. The Blackthorns had purchased it in 1872, ostensibly for the library, which was said to contain the finest collection of occult texts in southern England. The Daimler halted before a porte-cochere where a butler awaited. Grimshaw was his name, and he had the pallor of a man who had spent his life in the shadow of crypts. His eyes, the colour of wet slate, flicked over Poirot's immaculate attire, with the faint disdain of one who had seen better-dressed corpses. "Monsieur Poirot," Grimshaw intoned, as though pronouncing a death sentence. "Madame awaits in the great hall." Poirot stepped into the entrance hall and paused, letting the atmosphere seep into his bones. The air was thick with beeswax, old leather and something metallic. Blood, perhaps, or merely the scent of iron from the numerous suits of armour that lined the walls. A grandfather clock dominated the space, its face painted with scenes from the Danse Macabre, skeletons cavorting with lords and ladies, all grinning with equal enthusiasm. The pendulum swung with the solemnity of a metronome counting down to doomsday. 4 figures stood beneath a chandelier that dripped wax like tears. They turned as one when Poirot entered, their faces a gallery of suspicion, grief, and barely concealed avarice. Evelina Blackthorn was first. She wore mourning black that clung to her figure like a lover's hands. Her veil lifted to reveal eyes the violet of storm clouds and cheekbones sharp enough to cut glass. A locket rested at her throat, its chain so fine it might have been spun from spider silk. She extended a hand gloved in black lace. "Monsieur Poirot," she said, her voice a husky contralto that carried the faintest tremor. "You came." "Madam," Poirot replied, bowing over her hand with the precision of a courtier. When one is summoned by impossibility, one does not dally. To her left stood Reginald Blackthorn, Reggie to his friends, of which he appeared to have few. 28, flushed with brandy and the kind of handsome that bordered on pretty. He wore his evening clothes with the carelessness of one who expected servants to remedy any disarray. His eyes, the same violet as his aunt's, were red-rimmed and restless. "Uncle Archie always said you were a pompous little frog," Reggie drawled, swirling amber liquid in a crystal tumbler. Seems he was right. Poirot's smile did not reach his eyes. "And yet, monsieur, it is your uncle who is dead, while I remain pompous." Dr. Mordecai Finch stood apart, a tall man with the stooped shoulders of one who spent too much time bent over operating tables. His hair was iron grey, his fingers stained with iodine and something darker. He carried a black medical bag that bulged unnaturally, as though it contained secrets too large for its dimensions. "Detective," Finch said, his voice clipped and precise. "I examined the body. Death instantaneous. The spike entered the heart at a perfect 45-degree angle. Remarkable precision. Or remarkable planning," Poirot murmured. Last came Miss Cordelia Wren, spiritualist and medium to the aristocracy. 25, draped in black lace that revealed more than it concealed, she moved with the fluid grace of a woman who believed the spirits guided her every step. Her eyes were the pale blue of glacier ice, and they fixed on Poirot with unnerving intensity. "The veil is thin here," she whispered. "Lord Blackthorn's spirit lingers. He has messages." Poirot inclined his head. "Then let us hope, mademoiselle, that his messages include the name of his murderer." Evelina gestured toward a double door of carved oak. "The library, where it happened." The procession moved with the solemnity of a funeral cortege. Grimshaw produced a keyring that jangled like bones. The library door was sealed with police tape, but Inspector Japp, summoned from Scotland Yard, awaited with the weary expression of a man who had seen too many locked rooms. "Poirot," Japp greeted, his moustache bristling. "Thought you were in Belgium, solving crimes among the chocolate shops." "Belgium, mon ami, is dull when England offers cuisine macabre." Japp snorted and peeled back the tape. The door swung inward on well-oiled hinges. The library was a cathedral of books, shelves rising 20 feet, accessed by a brass ladder that gleamed like a serpent. A Persian rug, once crimson, was now the colour of dried blood. In the centre stood the grandfather clock, taller than a man, its face cracked where the iron spike protruded. Upon that spike hung what had once been Lord Archibald Blackthorne. He was suspended like a butterfly on a pin, arms spread in a parody of crucifixion. His evening clothes were immaculate, save for the hole in his chest, through which the spike emerged slick and shining. His eyes stared sightlessly at the ceiling, where a fresco depicted the Last Judgment in lurid detail. Poirot circled the scene with the concentration of a pianist approaching a Steinway. He noted the absence of footprints in the blood save for the victim's own. The door had been bolted from the inside, 2 heavy iron bolts, still engaged. The windows were barred with iron grills installed in 1853, their screws rusted solid. The chimney was too narrow for a child, let alone a murderer. And yet the scent of jasmine lingered, delicate and incongruous. "Curious," Poirot murmured, extracting a single white feather from the rug. "From a lady's fan? Or an angel's wing?" Cordelia Wren swayed and would have fallen had Dr. Finch not caught her. His hands lingered a fraction too long on her waist. "Shock," Finch diagnosed. "She held a séance here only last night." Poirot's eyes narrowed to slits. A séance, to contact the living lord. Reggie laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "Uncle believed spirits walked these halls. Paid this charlatan a king's ransom for table-rapping nonsense." Evelina's hand went to her locket. "The emerald brooch, my mother's, is missing from the safe. The combination known only to Archibald." Poirot knelt, his knees creaking in protest, and examined the clock's base. The pendulum hung motionless at 3:17. He touched the glass face, still warm. "Observe," he said, addressing the room at large. "The clock stopped at the exact minute of death, yet the mechanism is undamaged. Someone wished us to believe time itself ceased when Lord Blackthorne died." Japp scratched his head. "But how'd the killer get in and out?" Poirot straightened, brushing imaginary dust from his coat. "That, Inspector, is the question. But first," he turned to Evelina. "Tell me of your husband's enemies." Evelina's laugh was bitter. Archibald collected enemies the way other men collect stamps. Business rivals, discarded mistresses. The spiritualist community he funded then denounced as frauds. "Specifics, madame." She hesitated then. 3 months ago, he received letters, black-bordered, written in green ink, threats. "The clock will claim its due," they said. Poirot's moustache twitched. "And these letters?" "Burned. Archibald said they were the ravings of a lunatic." Reggie drained his glass. "Uncle was cutting me out of the will. Said I was a wastrel. Needed to marry within the year, or lose everything to Evelina." Dr. Finch adjusted his spectacles. "Lord Blackthorne suffered from catalepsy. I treated him. He feared being buried alive. Had a bell installed in his coffin when the time came." Cordelia's voice floated like incense. "The spirits warned of betrayal. A man with blood on his hands." Poirot held up a hand. "Enough. We will reconvene at dinner. I require solitude with the scene." The others filed out, their footsteps echoing. Poirot waited until the door closed, then began his examination in earnest. He measured the angle of the spike, 45 degrees as Finch had said. He tested the bolts, solid iron, no give. He climbed the ladder to examine the upper shelves, finding nothing but dust and the faint scent of jasmine stronger here. A hidden panel? No, but something. A faint click. The clock's face swung open like a door, revealing gears and pendulums. And there, caught in the mechanism, a single strand of black lace. Poirot extracted it with tweezers. Cordelia's, perhaps, or another woman entirely. He was descending the ladder when the scream came, a high tearing sound that seemed to come from the walls themselves. The library door, still bolted, creaked open by inches. Cold air rushed in, carrying the scent of earth and decay. Poirot stepped into the corridor. Empty, but on the parquet floor, a single footprint, bare and impossibly small, as though made by a child, or something that had never been a child at all. The clock behind him ticked once, though its hands had not moved. Chapter 2 at the impossible room. Inspector Japp's boots clacked across the parquet like impatient gunshots. He had arrived with 2 constables, a photographer, and the expression of a man who had been dragged from his supper. The police tape across the library door fluttered in a draft that had no business existing. "Poirot!" he barked, moustache bristling. "Tell me this is one of your continental practical jokes." Hercule Poirot stood in the centre of the Persian rug, hands clasped behind his back, head tilted as though listening to music only he could hear. "Alas, mon ami, the joke is on Lord Blackthorne, and it is in very poor taste." Japp grunted and pushed past. The constables followed, their lanterns casting long shadows that danced across the bookshelves like mischievous imps. The photographer, a thin man with a face like a worried ferret, set up his tripod with the reverence of a priest at an altar. Poirot resumed his circuit of the room, moving with the precision of a watchmaker. The library was 30 feet by 20, its ceiling lost in gloom. Mahogany panelling swallowed the light. The air tasted of vellum, candle smoke and iron. The grandfather clock loomed at the far end, its cracked face leering like a skull. Lord Blackthorne still hung upon the spike, his patent leather shoes dangling 6 inches above the rug. Blood had pooled beneath him in a near-perfect circle, as though drawn with a compass. "Time of death?" Poirot asked without looking up. Dr. Finch stepped forward, medical bag clutched like a talisman. "Between 3 and 3:30 a.m. Rigour is advanced but not complete. The spike severed the aorta. Exsanguination would have been rapid." "Yet the clock stopped at precisely 3:17, Poirot murmured. "Curious punctuality." He knelt, producing a magnifying glass from his waistcoat. The blood had soaked into the rug's intricate pattern, Persian 16th century, priceless. No footprints marred the surface save for the victim's own, leading in a drunken stagger from the desk to the clock. The desk itself was chaos, papers scattered, an inkwell overturned, a brandy glass shattered. A single sheet lay uppermost, its message scrawled in green ink: "The hourglass runs dry." The clock claims its due. Poirot's lips pursed, the same hand as the threatening letters Madame Blackthorne described. Evelina, who had entered silently, nodded. Her veil was lifted now, revealing a face pale as parchment. Archibald laughed at them, said they were the work of a cracked spiritualist he'd exposed. "Names?" Japp demanded. "Many, but Cordelia Wren was the last. He paid her £500 to contact his late wife. When the spirit demanded he sign over the east wing for a temple, he denounced her publicly." Reggie Blackthorne lounged against a bookshelf. swirling brandy he had no business drinking at a crime scene. Uncle was cutting everyone off. Me, the spiritualists, even the Royal Society. He called their resurrection experiments necromantic nonsense. Poirot's eyes flicked to Dr. Finch. Resurrection? Finch's fingers tightened on his bag. Lord Blackthorne funded certain speculative research, electrostimulation of cadaveric tissue, purely scientific. Funded by whom? Japp asked. Anonymous donors, Finch said smoothly, through a trust. Poirot moved to the windows. The iron bars were embedded deep in stone, their screws sealed with a century of paint. He tested each, solid. The chimney was a narrow throat, soot-black and barely wide enough for a cat. He sniffed. Coal smoke, yes, but beneath it, jasmine again, stronger now. Madame, he said to Evelina, your perfume. She touched the locket at her throat. Jasmine, yes, but I have not entered this room since yesterday. Cordelia Wren drifted in, black lace trailing like cobwebs. Her eyes were wide, pupils dilated. The veil is torn, she whispered. I feel him, Archibald. He's angry. Reggie snorted. You felt £500, you mean? Cordelia's hand flew to her cheek as though slapped. I returned the money. After Uncle threatened to have you arrested for fraud, Reggie sneered. Poirot raised a hand. Silence. Observe. He pointed to the clock. The spike was not a simple ornament, but a separate iron rod, threaded through the clock's face and extending 6 inches beyond. It had been driven into Blackthorne's chest with such force that the wood behind him was splintered. Yet the clock's mechanism appeared untouched. Inspector, Poirot said, your men searched the room. Top to bottom, nothing. Yet the door was bolted from within. The key? He indicated the heavy iron key still in the lock, on the inside. Japp scratched his head. Housekeeper swears it was locked when she brought tea at 7. Had to fetch Grimshaw to break it down. Poirot approached the door. The bolts were thick, rusted, but functional. He slid one. Back metal screeched. The other followed. No hidden springs, no trickery. He examined the keyhole. Scratches, yes, but old. Photographer, he called. The bolts, please. Close detail. The ferret-faced man scurried to comply, flash powder blooming like a small explosion. Poirot turned to the desk. The scattered papers were mostly correspondence, bills, invitations, a letter from the Royal Society declining further funding. But one sheet caught his eye. A diagram, hand-drawn, of the grandfather clock. Annotations in Blackthorne's spidery script, pendulum weight, 14 lbs. Counterbalance required, 180 lbs human. Trigger at 317. Poirot's moustache twitched. A mechanism, he murmured. But for what purpose? He opened the clock's face again. The gears were pristine, oiled. A small brass lever protruded, unmarked. He did not touch it. Dr. Finch, he said, you examined the body in situ? I did. No pulse, no respiration. The spike entered here. Finch indicated his own chest just left of the sternum and exited between the shoulder blades. Death instantaneous. Yet the body hangs level, Poirot observed. No sag. Rigor, yes, but the arms are spread as though posed. He climbed the library steps, portable mahogany, on brass wheels, and examined Blackthorne's hands. The right clutched a small object. A white feather, identical to the one on the rug. 2 feathers, Poirot said softly. One fallen, one grasped. A message, perhaps. Reggie laughed nervously. Uncle collecting souvenirs from his killer. Or from his accomplice, Poirot replied. He descended and moved to the fireplace. The hearth was cold, but the ashes were fresh. He sifted them with a poker. Burnt paper, yes, but also fragments of glass, vials perhaps. And something else, a button, mother of pearl, engraved with a tiny raven. "Madam?" He held it up. Evelina gasped. "Archibald's waistcoat. He wore it last night." Poirot pocketed the button. "The plot, it thickens." Japp cleared his throat. "So the killer was in the room, bolted the door, impaled Blackthorn, then vanished." "Precisely," Poirot said, "or never left." He returned to the clock, eyes tracing every detail. The pendulum hung motionless, but a faint vibration hummed through the case, like a bee trapped in a jar. "Inspector," he said, "have your men remove the body. Carefully, I must examine the mechanism." As the constables lifted Blackthorn down, his limbs stiff, head lolling, the clock gave a single mournful chime. The sound lingered, unnatural, as though the room itself exhaled. Cordelia screamed. The library door, which Japp had left ajar, slammed shut. The bolts shot home with a clang that echoed like a judge's gavel. Darkness swallowed the room. Lanterns guttered. Somewhere in the gloom, footsteps, light, rapid, bare, pattered across the rug and stopped. Poirot's voice cut through the black. "Who is there?" Silence. Then, from the clock itself, a child's voice, thin as wire. "Papa, the hands are moving again." The pendulum swung once, tick, though no one had touched it. And in the darkness, Poirot smiled. The game, as they say, was afoot. Chapter 3. The Séance of Smoke and Lies. The drawing-room of Death Manor was lit by a single candelabrum on the grand piano, and the dying fire in the grate. Shadows clung to the coffered ceiling like bats. Every carved cherub seemed to leer. The suspects had been summoned at 9, and the clock in the hall, mercifully ordinary, struck the hour with a dull bronze note. Hercule Poirot stood before the hearth, hands clasped behind his back, green eyes reflecting the flames. Around the rosewood table sat the 4 principals, arranged like cards in a macabre hand. Inspector Japp lurked by the door, arms folded, skepticism etched in every line of his face. Poirot spoke first. "We shall recreate the séance held last night exactly. Mademoiselle Wren will oblige. The spirits, one trusts, are punctual." Cordelia's lips curved in a smile, both serene and serpentine. "The veil is thin tonight, monsieur. Lord Blackthorn wishes to speak." Reggie muttered, "He wished to speak this morning too, through a hole in his chest." Evelina's hand flew to her locket. "Reggie, enough." Poirot raised an eyebrow. "Silence, s'il vous plaît. The table." It was a heavy oval of walnut, inlaid with mother of pearl. Cordelia produced 3 white candles, arranged them in a triangle, and lit them with a vesta struck on the sole of her slipper. The flames stood unnaturally straight, as though the air itself held its breath. "Join hands," she intoned. Poirot took the chair opposite her, placing his small, immaculate hands atop hers and Evelina's. The circle closed. Japp declined to participate, muttering about poppycock, but remained within earshot. Cordelia closed her eyes. Her breathing slowed, deepened. The candles guttered, though no draught stirred. "Spirit of Archibald Blackthorn," she called, voice resonant, "we summon thee across the abyss. Speak through this vessel." Silence. Then the table shifted, a fractional inch, but unmistakable. Reggie snorted. "Hydraulics, probably." "Shh," Evelina hissed. A second movement, stronger. The candelabrum on the piano answered with a sympathetic clink. Cordelia's head fell back, throat exposed like a sacrificial offering. A voice issued from her lips, not hers, but a gravelly baritone laced with aristocratic disdain. "Betrayed! The clock!" The candles flared. Wax hissed. Reggie half rose. "That's Uncle's voice! How the devil— Sit!" Poirot snapped. "Observe." Cordelia's, or the spirit's, head swiveled toward Reggie. "Wastrel, cut from the will." Evelina gasped. Dr. Finch's fingers tightened on Poirot's wrist. The voice continued. The emerald, hidden beneath. The raven's wing. A tremendous crack. The table leapt upward 6 inches and slammed down. 1 candle extinguished. In the sudden dimness, the fire roared, though no bellows had touched it. Cordelia slumped forward. The spell broken, she blinked like a sleeper waking. Did he speak? Poirot released her hand and produced his pocket watch. Precisely 7 minutes, 33 seconds, and the rappings, he tapped the table, occurred at intervals of 7.3 seconds. A metronome, perhaps. He flipped the table on its side with surprising strength. Beneath, taped to the underside, was a small brass cylinder connected to a rubber bulb. A phonograph horn, no larger than a teacup, protruded through a knothole into the flue. Voila! A concealed speaking tube. The spirit resides in the chimney. Japp pounced, wrenching the device free. Recorded message, clever. Cordelia's face drained of colour. I felt guided. The spirits guided by a length of India rubber, Poirot said dryly. He examined the cylinder. Etched into the wax, A.B., Last Will and Testament, 3:17 a.m. Reggie stared. Uncle recorded his own murder. Or someone recorded for him, Poirot replied. He turned to Cordelia. Mademoiselle, you received £500 to stage this performance. Who paid the balance? She hesitated. Then, a gentleman, tall, cloaked, left an envelope in the dumbwaiter. Evelina rose. The dumbwaiter leads to the kitchen and the cellar. Poirot's eyes gleamed. Then let us descend. The cellar stairs creaked like old bones. Lanterns revealed stone walls slick with damp, racks of wine shrouded in cobwebs, and a heavy oak door secured by a padlock bright with new scratches. Japp produced bolt cutters. The lock snapped. Inside, a laboratory. A deal table bore restraints of padded leather. Jars of cloudy fluid lined shelves, labels in Latin, extractum cardiacum, compound V, an operating lamp still warm, and on a sideboard, a phonograph, its horn missing. Poirot lifted a ledger. Entries in Finch's precise hand. 3 novae, subject AB, 2cc compound V, catalepsy-induced 02.47, pulse imperceptible 03.15, reanimation attempted 03.17, failure. Finch had gone very still. Lord Blackthorne volunteered. He feared death, wanted proof of revival. Poirot closed the ledger. And when revival failed, you impaled him to hide the experiment. No! Finch's voice cracked. He was already dead. Footsteps overhead. Rapid, panicked. Grimshaw's voice echoed down the stairwell. Fire! The dumbwaiter shaft! They raced upward. Flames licked from the kitchen flue, devouring the speaking tube's rubber hose. Sparks danced like malevolent fairies. Poirot snatched a fire bucket, hurled water. Japp organized a chain. Evelina beat at the flames with a tapestry. Cordelia stood frozen, whispering Latin. The fire was quenched, but not before it consumed a pile of documents in the dumbwaiter. Letters in green ink, a diagram of the clock's spike mechanism, and, curiously, a child's drawing of a raven with a clock for a body. Reggie picked it up, soot smudging his fingers. This is Lilibet's, Uncle's bastard. He kept her hidden in the east wing. Poirot's moustache twitched. A child in the walls, and now evidence burns. Dr. Finch edged toward the stairs. Poirot's cane shot out, tripping him. The medical bag spilled, scalpels, vials of clear liquid, and a brass key-engraved library master. Finch scrambled up. I treated him, nothing more. Poirot pocketed the key. We shall see. As the household dispersed, shaken, Poirot lingered in the smoking kitchen. He examined the dumbwaiter shaft. Charred wood, but intact. At the bottom, something glinted. A tiny shoe, patent leather size, child's 3. He climbed down carefully. The shoe contained a scrap of paper, folded small. "Papa says the clock is hungry. Tick-tock, hide." Poirot's grey cells whirred. A child witness, a staged séance, a fire to destroy evidence, and somewhere in the manor, a clock that had not finished its meal. From the library above came a single, deliberate chime, though the mechanism was in police custody. Poirot looked up the shaft into darkness. "Patience, mon petit. Hercule Poirot is listening." Chapter 4. Ashes and Automata. The fire was out, but the kitchen still reeked of scorched rubber and wet wool. Dawn had not yet reached the windows. The only light came from the stove's dying embers and the single lamp Poirot carried. He stood on the bottom rung of the dumbwaiter shaft, coat immaculate despite soot, and studied the child's shoe in his palm. Patent leather left foot brass buckle. Inside, the scrap of paper. "Papa says the clock is hungry. Tick-tock, hide." The handwriting was round, uncertain, the letters formed with a blunt pencil. A child's terror compressed into 8 words. Poirot slipped both shoe and note into an envelope, sealed it with wax from the kitchen candle, and labelled it Exhibit L. Then he climbed the shaft, fingers finding purchase on the charred rope, and emerged into the corridor where Inspector Japp waited with 2 constables. "Found something?" Japp asked. "Found someone," Poirot corrected. "A little girl who should not exist, and a doctor who burns evidence faster than a guilty conscience." Japp scratched his chin. "Finch?" "Finch," Poirot confirmed. "But first, the ashes." They returned to the kitchen. The fire brigade had departed, leaving buckets and the smell of wet ash. Poirot knelt, sifting the debris with a silver dessert spoon. He retrieved fragments, glass from shattered vials. A brass cog no larger than a sixpence, and, most telling, a strip of copper tape etched with perforations. "A music roll," Poirot murmured, "for a mechanical orchestra, or perhaps a mechanical murderer." Reggie Blackthorne appeared in the doorway, hair tousled, eyes wild. "The will. Uncle's solicitor arrives at noon. If I'm not married by midnight on my next birthday, Evelina gets everything. The East Wing, the trust, the resurrection patents." He stopped, realizing he had said too much. Poirot rose, brushing ash from his knees. "Patents, monsieur." Reggie swallowed. "Uncle funded Finch's experiments. Electrodes, galvanism, the whole Frankenstein business. Said if he could cheat death, the family fortune would be immortal. And you, monsieur, objected?" "I objected to being disinherited for refusing to marry some duke's daughter with a face like a haddock." Evelina entered, wrapped in a dressing gown of midnight silk. Archibald was obsessed. He built a laboratory in the cellar, paid Finch a king's ransom. When the Royal Society withdrew support, he threatened to expose the doctor's methods. Poirot's gaze flicked to the dumbwaiter. Methods that required a child's silence? Evelina's hand flew to her locket. "Lilibet. She's 7. Archibald's daughter by a housemaid. He kept her hidden, said the scandal would ruin us. She lives in the East Wing with a nurse." "Yet she wanders," Poirot said, producing the shoe. "And she draws ravens with clocks for bodies." Evelina paled. "She saw something last night. I found her in the corridor at 4, barefoot, clutching that drawing." Poirot turned to Japp. "We search the East Wing, now." They ascended the servants' stair, a narrow spiral of stone that smelled of tallow and despair. The East Wing was a warren of disused rooms, nurseries with faded wallpaper, a schoolroom where chalk ghosts lingered on the slate. At the end, a door painted robin's egg blue, locked. Grimshaw appeared, keyring jangling. "Miss Lilibet's quarters. The nurse was dismissed yesterday. Lord Blackthorne's orders." The key turned. Inside, a child's paradise turned prison. A doll's house the size of a wardrobe, its facade a perfect replica of Death Manor, complete with a tiny clock whose hands pointed to 3:17. A bed with rails, sheets tumbled. On the pillow, a single white feather. Poirot lifted the doll's house roof. Inside the miniature library, a doll in evening dress hung impaled on a clock spike. The doll's face had been crudely repainted to resemble Lord Blackthorne. Japp whistled. The kid saw the murder. Or was shown, Poirot said grimly. A faint whir came from the wardrobe. Poirot opened it. Inside, a cavity in the wall and a brass rail disappearing into darkness. On the rail sat a pair of child-sized boots, clockwork, gears exposed, soles crusted with dried blood. Automata, Poirot breathed. The footsteps we heard. The ghost in the corridor. He followed the rail. It led through the wall into a narrow passage lined with dust and cobwebs. Lantern light revealed more mechanisms. A music box that played a distorted version of Oranges and Lemons, a speaking tube connected to the library chimney, and most damning, a lever-marked spike. Poirot pulled it. Somewhere below, the library clock gave a single clang. Reggie stared. Uncle built this to scare us? Or to kill, Poirot said. The spike is retractable, triggered by counterweight when the pendulum reaches 3:17. The killer drugs the victim, positions him, activates the mechanism, then escapes through the passage. The door bolts itself via a spring, click-clack, and the clock stops to create the illusion of impossibility. Evelina touched the doll's house. Archibald designed it as a safeguard. If anyone tried to rob the library, the clock would defend itself. Yet someone turned the safeguard into a weapon, Poirot said. They returned to the main house. In the great hall, Dr. Finch waited, flanked by constables. His medical bag lay open on the table, contents inventoried. Syringes, compound V, and a brass key identical to the one found in the ashes. Doctor, Poirot said, you treated Lord Blackthorne for catalepsy. You induced it last night with your compound. You positioned him before the clock. You activated the mechanism, then you burned the evidence. Finch's face was a mask. Speculation. Poirot produced the music roll. This plays your voice, Docteur, giving orders to the automaton. Move the child, burn the letters, reset the spike. Finch lunged for the door. A constable tackled him. Handcuffs clicked. Japp grinned. Got him? Poirot shook his head. We have the mechanism, but not the motive. Why kill the golden goose? Evelina's voice was soft. The trust. Archibald was ending the experiments. He'd seen things, failures, bodies that twitched but did not live. He threatened to go to the police. Finch spat. He promised immortality, then reneged when the corpses screamed. Silence fell, broken only by the distant chime of the restored library clock, now under police guard. Poirot turned to the group. The child, Lilibet. She must be found. She is the only witness. They searched. Every room, every passage. At noon, the solicitor arrived to read the will. The household gathered in the drawing room, tension thick as the fog outside. The will was simple. Everything to Evelina, with a codicil. Reggie to inherit if he married within the year. A trust for my daughter Lilibet, to be revealed upon my death. Reggie laughed bitterly. Uncle's final joke. The solicitor produced a second envelope, sealed in green wax. Inside, a key and a note in Blackthorne's hand, to open the clock's heart. Forgive me, Evelina. The child is yours now. Poirot took the key. It fit the library clock's hidden panel. Inside, gears, yes, but also a small door. Behind it, a bundle wrapped in oilskin. He unwrapped it carefully. A ledger, Finches stolen and annotated in Blackthorn's script. Entries detailed payments, experiments, and finally, Subject L, successful reanimation, 48 hours. Speech restored, memory intact. She remembers the spike. Poirot closed the ledger. The child was not hidden for scandal. She was hidden because she died, and Finch brought her back. Evelina swayed. Reggie caught her. From the corridor came a sound, small feet running, then silence. Poirot stepped into the hall. A white feather lay on the parquet. Beyond it, the library door stood ajar. Inside, the clock's pendulum swung tick-tock, though no one had wound it. And on the rug, in fresh blood, a child's handprint. The hunt was far from over. Chapter 5. The Vanishing Corpse. The library door hung open like a mouth that had forgotten how to close. The air inside was colder than the grave, and the grandfather clock, its face cracked, its spike bare, stood sentinel over an empty circle of blood. The body of Lord Archibald Blackthorne, so meticulously impaled only hours before, had vanished. Inspector Japp's bellow echoed down the corridor. "Constables, seal the wing! No one in or out!" His boots pounded closer, accompanied by the clatter of helmets and the frantic scratch of notebooks. Poirot, already within the room, did not turn. He knelt in the blood, Coatham brushing the rug, and traced the edges of the stain with a gloved finger. "Observe, Japp," he said without looking up. "The circle is unbroken, no drag marks across the threshold. Yet the corpse is gone." Japp skidded to a halt, red-faced. "Gone! He was dead, Poirot! Spike through the heart, rigor like iron!" "Dead men do not walk," Poirot agreed. "They are carried." He rose, eyes sweeping the room. The police photographer's flash powder still dusted the air like frost. The bolts on the door remained engaged from the inside. The windows were barred. The chimney, too narrow, and yet Poirot's gaze settled on the clock. The pendulum hung motionless at 3:17, but the blood on the spike had been wiped clean. Streaks of crimson on the iron, deliberate, almost polite. He opened the clock's face. The gears were warm. A faint vibration hummed through the brass. "Someone has been here," he murmured, "recently." Evelina appeared in the doorway, wrapped in a dressing gown of burgundy velvet, hair unbound. The clock, it moved him? Reggie followed, dishevelled, brandy flask in hand. Uncle always said the house was alive. Looks like he was right. Dr. Finch, under guard but not yet in cuffs, stood behind them. His eyes flicked to the clock, then away. "Catalepsy," he said quickly. "I warned you. The compound induces a death-like state. He may have revived." Poirot's smile was thin. "Revived, walked down from the spike, cleaned the blood from the iron, and departed for a constitutional? Non, docteur. The dead stay dead, unless assisted." He knelt again, this time at the base of the clock. The rug here was slightly askew. He lifted it. Beneath, a trapdoor, flush with the floorboards, its edges sealed with wax. A brass ring, painted to match the wood, lay flat. Voila! The rabbit hole. Japp produced a crowbar. The trapdoor resisted, then gave with a groan. A narrow shaft descended into darkness, iron rungs bolted to stone. The air that rose was cold, damp, and carried the unmistakable reek of formaldehyde. "Cellar," Japp grunted, but the cellar door was padlocked from the outside. "Padlocks," Poirot said, "are for honest men." He descended first, lantern raised. The rungs were slick with condensation. 10 feet down, the shaft opened into a tunnel. Stone walls, low ceiling, the faint gleam of rails. The same brass rails they had found in the east wing. "Automata again," Poirot said. "A conveyance for the dead." The tunnel sloped gently, ending at a wooden door reinforced with iron. It stood ajar. Beyond, the cellar laboratory, now a scene of chaos. The operating table was overturned. Jars lay shattered, their contents, cloudy fluid, pale tissue, spilled across the flagstones. The coffin, empty before, now held a single white feather. Poirot lifted it. The third feather, a signature perhaps. Footprints marred the mess. 2 sets, one barefoot, small, Lilibet's. The other in surgical boots, size 10, the same that had left oily prints in the passage. They led to a second door, this one leading to the wine cellar. Japp's constables fanned out. Spread out! Find the girl! Poirot moved methodically. He righted the operating table. Beneath it, a child's drawing crumpled but intact. The raven clock again, but now with a stick figure hanging from the spike. Beneath, in red crayon, Papa went away. Evelina entered, eyes wide. Lilibet. Poirot showed her the drawing. Your stepdaughter saw more than we thought. Reggie stumbled in, flask forgotten. There's a dumbwaiter here, too. Leads to the kitchen, but it's stuck. Poirot examined it. The rope was cut, the platform jammed halfway. On it, a smear of blood still wet. Someone tried to move the body upward, Poirot said, but the weight was too great, so they took the tunnel instead. Dr. Finch appeared in the doorway, flanked by constables. I can explain. Poirot cut him off. You induced catalepsy at 2:47 a.m. At 3:15, pulse ceased. At 3:17, the spike triggered. You entered via the passage, confirmed death, then lowered the body here for further experimentation, but something interrupted you. Finch's face was grey. The child. She woke, saw me. I had to hide her, Poirot finished, or silence her. Evelina's hand flew to her mouth. You monster! Poirot turned to the coffin. It was lined with zinc, the lid propped nearby. Inside, restraints, padded but stained, and etched into the wood. Subject L, day 47. Lilibet, Poirot said softly. She was the first success, revived after clinical death. But the process left marks. He lifted a restraint. Beneath it, a tiny shoe, the mate to the one found in the dumbwaiter. Reggie stared. Uncle kept his own daughter in a coffin? For her protection, Finch said. The world would call her a monster. Poirot's eyes were steel. You used her as proof to secure more funding. When Blackthorne threatened exposure, you killed him. Then staged the vanishing to buy time. Finch lunged, but the constables were faster. Cuffs clicked. Japp grinned. Attempted murder of a corpse. There's a new one for the books. Poirot shook his head. The corpse was merely inconvenient. The child is the prize. He moved to the far wall. A panel, concealed behind wine racks, stood ajar. Beyond, another passage, narrower, the air thick with the scent of earth and decay. Lilibet's hiding place, Poirot said. She knows these tunnels better than we. He entered, lantern raised. The passage twisted, walls damp, cobwebs brushed his face like fingers. 20 feet in, it opened into a small chamber, a child's sanctuary. A pallet bed, a doll with one eye missing, a lantern with a cracked chimney. On the wall, drawings pinned with dressmaker's pins. The raven clock, the spike, a stick figure with a moustache, Poirot himself. And in the corner, curled beneath a blanket, Lilibet. She was tiny, pale, eyes too large for her face. When Poirot approached, she flinched. Ma petite, he said gently, kneeling. You are safe. She clutched a white feather. Papa said the clock would keep me safe. Then the bad man made it eat him. Poirot took her hand. It was ice cold. The bad man is gone. Come. He carried her out. Evelina wept, reaching for the child. Lilibet buried her face in Poirot's shoulder. In the laboratory, Finch struggled against the constables. "She's not natural. She died. I brought her back." Poirot's voice cut like a scalpel. "You brought back a child's terror, and for that, Docteur, you will answer." As they ascended to the main house, the library clock, now in the corridor under guard, gave a single mournful chime. The pendulum swung once, though no one had wound it. Lilibet whispered, "It's still hungry." Poirot looked at the clock, then at the child. "Not any more, ma petite. Hercule Poirot has seen to its diet." But in the shadows of the stairwell, a fourth white feather drifted down, landing at his feet. The manor was not yet done with its secrets. Chapter 6. The Child in the Walls. Hercule Poirot carried Lilibet up the servants' stair, as though she weighed no more than a prayer book. The child's arms were locked around his neck. Her breath came in small, hiccuping sobs that smelled faintly of milk and terror. Behind them, Inspector Japp barked orders. Constables to the east wing, Grimshaw to fetch blankets, Dr. Finch to the library under double guard. The manor, which had slumbered for centuries under its shroud of fog, now crackled with the urgency of a Sioux battlefield. In the blue nursery, Poirot set Lilibet on the window seat. Dawn had finally clawed its way through the grime on the panes, painting the room in bruised lilacs and golds. The doll's house still stood open, its miniature corpse dangling from the tiny spike. Poirot closed the roof with a soft click. Evelina knelt, arms outstretched. "Lilibet, darling!" The child shrank back, pressing into Poirot's coat. "You sent nurse away," she whispered. "Papa said you would lock me in the clock." Evelina's face crumpled. "Never, I swear it." Poirot patted the small back. "Ma petite, you are cold. We will have tea, and then you will tell Monsieur Poirot everything. But first," he turned to Japp, "the passage behind the wardrobe. It must be mapped, every inch." Japp nodded to a constable. "Bring string, chalk, lanterns." While the men worked, Poirot sat cross-legged on the rug like a tailor, Lilibet in his lap. He produced a handkerchief, silk, monogrammed, and wiped her cheeks. "Now," he said gently, "the clock. When did it become hungry?" Lilibet's eyes, the colour of storm glass, fixed on the doll's house. "Always. Papa said it was grandfather's joke. Sir Mortimer Death built it to guard the books. If a thief came, the raven would fly and the spike would—" She mimed a stabbing motion, small fist punching air. Poirot's moustache twitched. "And the bad man?" "Dr. Finch." The name came out flat, rehearsed. "He gave Papa sleepy medicine, in the brandy. Then he made the clock eat him. I watched from the mouse hole." She pointed to a knot in the wainscoting. Poirot crawled over, pressed the wood. It swung inward on a hinge, revealing a peephole no larger than a coin. Through it, a perfect view of the library clock. "Magnifique," Poirot murmured. The child was the witness no one suspected. Reggie burst in, coat askew. "The solicitor's here. Says the will can't be read until the body's found, and Finch is demanding a lawyer." Poirot rose, lifting Lilibet with him. "The body will be found, and the lawyer can wait. First, we set a trap." He carried the child to the corridor. The household had gathered, Grimshaw rigid as a coffin nail, Cordelia Wren clutching her velvet pouch, Evelina ringing her locket chain until it left red marks. Finch stood between two constables, wrists cuffed, face a study in controlled panic. Poirot addressed them all. "Tonight, we rewind the clock, literally. The mechanism will be restored. Pendulum, spike, counterweight. At 3:17 a.m., it will strike, and the killer will return to ensure his secret dies with the child." Finch laughed, a brittle sound. "You'll trap no one but yourselves." Poirot's smile was winter. "We shall see. The day passed in fevered preparation. Constables mapped the passages, rails, levers, speaking tubes, marking each with chalk. The library clock was reassembled under Poirot's supervision. Gears oiled, spike polished, pendulum hung. A constable wound the mechanism with a key the size of a dagger. The hands were set to 3 égreux. Lilibet, wrapped in a blanket, watched from the doorway. "It will eat again," she whispered. "No," Poirot said. "Tonight, it eats justice." At midnight, the manor settled into uneasy silence. Gas lamps were extinguished. Only the library glowed, lit by a single candle on the desk. The suspects were confined to their rooms, except Finch, who remained in the library, chained to a chair, a constable at the door. Poirot took position in the hidden passage behind the clock, lantern shuttered. Japp hid in the chimney alcove. Lilibet, drugged with warm milk and honey, slept in the nursery under Evelina's guard. The clock ticked, loud, deliberate, a heartbeat in the dark. 3:12. Poirot's pocket watch matched the rhythm. He listened. Somewhere, a floorboard creaked. Not the constable's measured pace. Lighter, bare feet, 3:14. A shadow detached from the bookshelf. Cordelia Wren, black lace discarded for a servant's smock, face scrubbed clean of powder. She moved like smoke, fingers finding the hidden panel behind the clock. Poirot stepped out, cane raised. "Mademoiselle," she froze. I heard noises. The spirits. Spare me the ectoplasm." Poirot's voice was soft steel. "You came to reset the spike, to silence the child before she spoke." Cordelia's eyes darted to Finch, who strained against his chains. "He made me! The phonograph, the footsteps. He said if I didn't help, he'd expose my frauds." Japp emerged, cuffs ready. "Cordelia Wren, you're nicked." But as the constable moved, the clock whirred. The pendulum swung wildly. The spike shot forward, not at the chair, but at Poirot. He twisted, cane clattering. The iron grazed his shoulder, tearing fabric. Cordelia screamed. Finch laughed maniacally. The mechanism jammed. Gears screeched. From the passage came a child's voice. Lilibet, awake, terrified. "Papa! The raven's flying!" Poirot lunged, wrenching the brass lever. The spike retracted with a clang. Silence fell, broken only by Finch's ragged breathing. Japp hauled Cordelia upright. "You triggered it remotely," she nodded, sobbing. "A wire from the east wing. Finch said if Poirot got too close." Poirot examined his torn sleeve. "A scratch no more. The doctor is thorough, but not thorough enough." He opened the clock's heart. Inside, the oilskin bundle from the will reading, now unwrapped. The ledger, yes, but also a small brass key and a photograph. A little girl, age 3, smiling gap-toothed. On the back, "Lilibet, my heart. If I fail, protect her." A.B. Poirot turned to Finch. "You killed him to silence the experiments, but the child remembered. So you staged the vanishing, the fire, the automata. All to bury the truth," Finch spat. "The truth is progress. She lived after death. Imagine a child's nightmares," Poirot cut in. "Imagine a father's guilt." He knelt by the trapdoor. Lilibet saw everything from the mousehole. The drugged brandy, the spike, the tunnel. She drew it to warn us. Evelina entered, Lilibet in her arms. The child pointed at Finch. "He made Papa sleep forever." Finch lunged again, chains rattling. "She's not human, she's—" "Enough!" Poirot's voice cracked like a whip. "You will hang, Docteur, for murder, for torture, for turning a child's grief into a sideshow." The clock gave one final tick, then fell silent. The pendulum hung still. Lilibet slipped from Evelina's arms and walked to Poirot. She placed the white feather in his hand. "For your hat," she said solemnly, "so the raven doesn't get you." Poirot tucked it into his breast pocket, over his heart. "Merci, ma petite, the raven is grounded." But as they led Finch away, the manor exhaled. Somewhere deep in the walls, a gear turned. A soft whir, then nothing. Poirot looked at the clock, then at the child. "The house still speaks. We have not heard the last word." In the passage, a fifth feather drifted down, landing at Lilibet's feet. She picked it up, eyes wide. "It's from Papa," she whispered. "He says, hurry." Chapter 7. The Mechanical Heart. The library was a cage of shadows and candlelight. The grandfather clock stood at its centre, restored to lethal beauty. Pendulum gleaming, spike retracted but poised, face cracked like a skull that had learned to smile. At 3:16 a.m., the manor held its breath. Hercule Poirot stood before the clock, coat unbuttoned, cane in hand. Inspector Japp flanked the door, revolver drawn. 2 constables guarded the passage entrances. Dr. Mordecai Finch sat chained to a heavy oak chair, wrists raw, eyes burning with the fervour of a man who had already died inside. Cordelia Wren had been removed to the station an hour earlier, sobbing about wires and spirits. Reggie Blackthorne paced the corridor, brandy flask confiscated. Evelina and Lilibet were locked in the nursery with a police matron. The stage was set. Poirot addressed Finch. "You will confess, Doctor. The clock will strike 3:17, the spike will extend, and you will tell us why you turned a father's fear into a daughter's nightmare." Finch's laugh was a dry rattle. "Confess to saving a child from the grave. Blackthorne begged me. Bring her back, he said, any cost." Then he saw the cost, her screams, the twitching, and he faltered. "I gave him eternity. He chose cowardice." The clock ticked. Loud, deliberate, 3:16:30. Poirot opened the clock's face. Inside the mechanism gleamed, gears oiled, counterweight balanced. A thin wire ran from the pendulum to a hidden lever. He traced it with a gloved finger. "Your design," he said. "Compound V induces catalepsy. At 3:15, pulse ceases. At 3:17, the pendulum triggers the spike. You enter via the passage. Confirm death. Lower the body through the trapdoor. The door bolts itself. The clock stops. Impossible!" Finch's eyes flicked to the passage. "You'll never prove." Poirot produced the music roll from his pocket. "This plays your voice, Docteur. Move the child, burn the letters, reset the spike. Recorded in the cellar and the photograph. Lilibet at 3 before she died the first time. Blackthorne's note. If I fail, protect her. You failed him." 3:16:45. The pendulum swung. Tick. Poirot stepped closer. "You needed funding. The trust was ending. Blackthorne threatened exposure, illegal resurrection, child experimentation, so you killed him. Staged the vanishing to buy time. Used Cordelia's seances to spread fear. The automata to create ghosts, all to hide one truth. Lilibet remembers." Finch strained against the chains. "She's a miracle. Proof that death is a door, not a wall. Proof that some doors should remain locked," Poirot said, 3:16:55. The clock whirred. Gears engaged. The spike began to extend, slow, inexorable, glinting in the candlelight. Japp tensed. "Poirot! Wait!" Poirot commanded. The spike reached its full length, 6 inches of iron death. It stopped quivering, inches from Finch's chest. Finch stared at it, transfixed. "You wouldn't! You need me alive!" Poirot's smile was terrible. "I need the truth. The spike is disconnected, but you do not know that." He produced a small brass key, the one from the will. "This opens the clock's heart. Inside, the final ledger, your handwriting, subject L, day 47. Speech restored, memory intact. She remembers the spike." Blackthorne's annotation, "End it." Finch's face crumpled. "He was going to destroy her. My work, everything." "So you destroyed him," Poirot said. But the child drew the raven clock, left feathers as warnings, hid in the walls. She led us to you. 3:17. The clock struck, a single, pure note. The pendulum swung once, tick, then froze. Silence. Poirot closed the clock's face. The performance is over. He turned to Japp. Arrest him for murder, conspiracy, unlawful experimentation. The child will testify. Finch sagged. She'll be called a freak. She will be called a witness, Poirot said, and a hero. Japp signalled. The constables moved in. As they hauled Finch to his feet, the doctor lunged, not at Poirot, but at the clock. His cuffed hands grasped the spike, wrenching it free. He swung it like a dagger. Poirot stepped aside. The spike embedded in the oak chair with a thunk. Finch collapsed, sobbing. Japp cuffed him properly. Attempted murder of a detective. Add it to the list. Poirot knelt, retrieving the spike. It was warm. The heart is mechanical, docteur, but yours is not. He opened the clock's hidden compartment. Inside, the oilskin bundle, now fully revealed, the ledger, the photograph, and a small wax cylinder. Finch's. Voice, confessing everything, recorded by Blackthorne in secret. Poirot held it up. Insurance! Your patron was thorough. Finch stared, defeated. He knew, all along. The constables dragged him away. His footsteps echoed down the corridor, fading into the manor's bones. Poirot stood alone with the clock. He wound it once, gently. The pendulum swung, tick-tock, steady calm. He set the hands to dawn. From the nursery came Lilibet's voice, small but clear. Monsieur Poirot, is the raven sleeping? He smiled. Oui, ma petite, forever. But as he turned to leave, the clock gave a soft whir. The spike retracted, then extended again, slowly, deliberately. A final gesture. Poirot paused. No, some habits die hard. He disconnected the counterweight, pocketed the brass lever. The clock fell silent. In the corridor, Evelina waited with the Lilibet in her arms. The child held out a white feather. For your hat, she said, so you remember? Poirot tucked it into his breast pocket beside the first. I will remember everything, ma petite. Reggie appeared, eyes red but sober. The will's red. Everything to Evelina. Lilibet's trust is ironclad. I'm out. Poirot inclined his head. Marry for love, monsieur, not for clocks. As dawn painted the windows gold, Poirot stepped into the fog. The manor loomed behind him. Gargoyles weeping moss. The clock's final chime echoed in his memory, pure, mechanical, satisfied. But in his pocket, the feathers rustled. 5 now, 1 for each secret. The case was closed. The raven was grounded. The child was free. Yet somewhere in the walls, a gear turned. A soft tick, then nothing. Poirot smiled. C'est fini. Chapter 8. The final tick. The fog had lifted by the time the police vans rolled down Blackthorne Lane, wheels crunching on gravel still wet with dew. Death Manor stood in the pale November light, like a Gothic dowager who had finally confessed her sins. Gargoyles no longer wept. The moss on their cheeks had dried to a crust. The grandfather clock, its spike removed, its pendulum stilled, had been crated and carted off to Scotland Yard as evidence. The house felt lighter, as though the very stones exhaled. Hercule Poirot stood on the front steps, Homburg at a precise angle, gloves immaculate despite the night's exertions. Inspector Japp emerged from the porte-cochere, rubbing his hands against the chill. Finch is singing like a cracked phonograph, Japp said. Full confession, murder, conspiracy, unlawful experimentation. Cordelia Wren's turned Queen's evidence. Says Finch paid her to stage the séances and trigger the spike remotely if anyone got too close. Reggie's in the clear. The lad only nicked the emerald to frame Evelina. Foolish, but not fatal. Poirot nodded. And the child? Matron's with her. Evelina's already engaged a solicitor for the trust. Lilibet will want for nothing. Japp hesitated. You'll testify? Naturellement. The little grey cells do not forget. A constable approached, saluting. Sir, the cellar's cleared. Found this in the coffin lining. He held out a small cloth-wrapped bundle. Poirot unwrapped it. A child's silver rattle, engraved L.B., 1881, the year of her first death. Poirot turned it in his fingers. A keepsake, from a father who tried to outrun time. Inside the hall, the household gathered for the final accounting. Grimshaw stood at attention, face unreadable. Reggie nursed black coffee, eyes fixed on the floor. Cordelia Wren, pale and handcuffed, waited between two constables. Evelina entered last, Lilibet at her side. The child wore a new dress, blue velvet, white collar, and clutched a doll with both eyes intact. Poirot addressed them all. The mechanism is dismantled. The raven is grounded, but one thread remains. He produced the 5 white feathers fanned like playing cards. Lilibet's warnings, one for each secret, the drugged brandy, the spike, the vanishing corpse, the automata, the confession. He placed them on the mantel. The 6th feather, he looked at Lilibet, is for the future, a promise. Lilibet stepped forward, solemn. Papa said the clock would keep ticking until the truth came out. It stopped when you took the spike. Poirot knelt, eye level. And now? She touched his moustache, curious, unafraid. Now it's quiet, like sleep, he smiled. Bien, sleep is for the living. The solicitor, a thin man with a voice like parchment, cleared his throat. The will is executed. Lady Blackthorne inherits the estate. Miss Lilibet's trust is established, $50,000, administered by her stepmother until majority. Mr. Reginald receives a legacy of $5,000 on condition of marriage within the year to a woman of good character. Reggie snorted. I'll find one, eventually. Evelina knelt beside Lilibet. We'll rename the manor. Dawn House. No more death. The child considered. Can we keep the doll's house? The tiny clock doesn't bite. Poirot chuckled. We will disarm it, ma petite. Japp's men loaded the last crates. Finch's laboratory equipment, vials, electrodes, the phonograph with its damning cylinder, disappeared into evidence bags. Cordelia was led out, head high, black lace trailing like a funeral banner. As the vans departed, Poirot lingered in the library. The room felt larger without the clock's menace. Sunlight streamed through the bars, painting stripes on the blood-stained rug, soon to be replaced. He opened the hidden panel one last time. Empty now, save for a single brass cog, no larger than a shilling. He pocketed it, a souvenir for the little grey cells. Lilibet appeared in the doorway, doll in arms. Monsieur Poirot, will you visit? He bowed. When you're older, I will teach you chess, and how to spot a lie. She giggled, the sound of bells after a storm. Outside, the Yiking Daimler waited. Poirot paused on the steps. Evelina approached, locket open now, revealing a miniature of Lilibet at 3. You gave her back her childhood, she said. How can I repay? Poirot raised a hand. Repay the child, with love, with truth. The rest is papier-mâché. He climbed into the car. As it pulled away, he watched Dawn House shrink in the mirror. The gargoyles seemed to smile. At the station, Japp joined him on the platform. The London Express hissed in, steam curling like incense. One thing bothers me, Japp said. The clock chimed after we disconnected it, last night. You heard it. Poirot's eyes twinkled. A trick of the acoustics, mon ami. Or perhaps a thank you. The train lurched forward. Poirot settled into his compartment, produced the brass cog, and turned it in the light. On its reverse, etched in tiny script, Mors janua vitae. Death is the gate of life. He slipped it into his waistcoat pocket beside the feathers. The manor was silent now. The raven slept, the child laughed, and somewhere, in the walls of Dornhouse, a single gear turned, one final tick, then stilled forever. The final tick had sounded. The case was closed. The heart, mechanical no longer, beat on. Chapter 9. The Grey Cell's Triumph. The 1147 from Blackthorn Station slid through the Kentish meadows like a silver needle through green silk. Hercule Poirot occupied the same first-class compartment he had arrived in, but the atmosphere had changed. The fog was gone. Sunlight poured through the window and gilded the dust motes into tiny constellations. His Homburg rested on the seat opposite. Gloves folded atop it with geometric precision. In his lap lay a small leather notebook. New, its pages already half filled with neat slanted handwriting. Across the aisle, Inspector Japp nursed a paper cup of railway tea and stared at the passing hedgerows. "Still can't believe it," he muttered. "A 7-year-old girl outwitting a murderer with paper ravens and chicken feathers." Poirot did not look up from his notes. "Ma petite did not outwit him, mon ami. She remembered. Memory is the sharpest blade of all." Japp grunted. "Finch'll hang. Cordelia Wren gets 10 years for conspiracy. Reggie's off to Gretna with a barmaid. Says she's got good character and better ankles. Evelina's already hired architects to gut the East Wing. Dornhouse, indeed." Poirot closed the notebook. And the clock? Chopped up for evidence. Spikes in the Black Museum. Pendulums melted down. The rest is scrap. Japp sipped his tea and grimaced. "Though I still hear it ticking in my sleep. Tick, tock." Poirot's moustache curved in a faint smile. A phantom rhythm. The mind, it plays tricks. The train slowed for a signal. Outside, a boy in a flat cap waved from a gate. Lilibet's face flashed in Poirot's memory. Solemn, feather in hand. He reached into his breast pocket and withdrew the 5 white feathers, now bound with a silk thread the colour of dawn. He laid them on the notebook like a bookmark. Japp watched. "You keeping those?" "Souvenirs," Poirot said. "Each feather a chapter. The drugged brandy, the locked room, the vanishing corpse, the mechanical ghost, the confession." He touched the 6th knot in the thread, empty. "And this space, for the future. A reminder that every mystery leaves a loose thread." The train lurched forward. Japp leaned back. "So, how did you know it wasn't supernatural?" "The footsteps, the voice, the clock chiming after we cut the wires." Poirot raised a finger. "Because, Inspector, the dead do not walk, but the desperate build machines to make them appear to. Observe the pattern." Japp shook his head, admiring. "And the child? Lilibet died of fever in 81. Finch revived her with galvanism and compound V. Crude, experimental, monstrous. Blackthorn funded it out of guilt and terror of losing her. When the process left her, altered, nightmares, sensitivity to light, he hid her. Finch saw profit. When Blackthorn threatened exposure, Finch weaponized the clock Blackthorn himself had designed as a safeguard. Irony, n'est-ce pas?" The train whistle sounded, mournful over the fields. Poirot reopened his notebook and wrote a final line. "Truth is not found in the clock's face, but in the child's eyes." He underlined it twice. Japp stretched. "You'll be back in Belgium by supper. Craving chocolate?" Poirot's eyes twinkled. "First, a small detour. Lady Evelina invited me to the christening of the new library. No clocks allowed." The train pulled into Charing Cross amid steam and shouting porters. Poirot descended, cane tapping the platform like a metronome. Japp followed, lugging a crate marked evidence, fragile. At the barrier, a small figure waited, Lilibet, in a sailor dress, hair ribboned in blue. Evelina stood beside her, eyes bright with unshed tears. The child held out a parcel wrapped in brown paper. "For you," she said, "so you don't forget." Poirot knelt. The parcel was light. He unwrapped it, a tiny clockwork raven, wings folded, beak open in mid-core. On its breast, a brass plate engraved, "To Monsieur Poirot, who stopped the hungry clock, from Lilibet and Mamma." He turned the key. The raven flapped once, twice, then settled. No tick, no tock, just the soft whir of a toy. Poirot's throat tightened, an unaccustomed sensation. "Magnifique! I will treasure it." Lilibet hugged him suddenly, fiercely. "You made the walls stop whispering." He patted her back. "Walls only whisper when secrets hide inside, ma petite. Yours are free now." Evelina offered her hand. "The east wing is demolished. We found one last thing." She gave him a small tin box. Inside, a lock of dark hair tied with faded ribbon, and a note in Blackthorn's spidery hand. "If she lives again, let her live in light." Abbe Poirot closed the box. He loved her, in his broken way. The station clock struck noon. Porters shouted. Jap cleared his throat. "Train to Dover leaves in 10. Poirot tipped his hat to Evelina, kissed Lilibet's forehead. "Grow wise, little raven, and kind." As he boarded the Continental Express, he placed the raven on the luggage rack beside his Homburg. The feathers went into his waistcoat, 6 now, the empty space filled with a single blue ribbon from Lilibet's hair. The train pulled out. London receded. Poirot opened his notebook to a fresh page and wrote, "Case closed, manor renamed, child reclaimed. Yet the grey cells never rest." Somewhere, another clock ticks. He underlined the last line, closed the book, and watched England slide away. In his pocket, the raven's wings gave a single silent flap. The game, as always, continued. Chapter 10. Epilogue. The Silent Spike. The Belgian winter had arrived early, frosting the windows of 221B Rue de l'Abbaye with lace. Hercule Poirot sat at his walnut secretaire, the morning light catching the silver of his hair and the perfect curves of his moustache. Before him lay the small clockwork raven, wings folded, brass plate gleaming. Beside it, the 6 white feathers, now tied with Lilibet's blue ribbon, rested in a crystal dish like a tiny nest. The brass cog from the manor's heart hung on a watch chain across his waistcoat, catching the firelight whenever he moved. A soft knock. George, his valet, entered with the post on a silver tray. "From England, sir, and a parcel." Poirot slit the envelope first. Evelina's handwriting, elegant and steady. Dawn House, 12th of December 1888. "Monsieur Poirot, the east wing is gone. In its place a garden, roses for Lilibet, jasmine for me." She laughs now without looking over her shoulder. "The doll's house sits on the mantel, its clock frozen at noon. We kept one feather, you have the rest. The enclosed is hers," she insisted. With gratitude that will outlast clocks, Evelina and Lilibet. The parcel was light. Poirot unwrapped it carefully. A child's drawing, rolled like a scroll. He spread it on the blotter. A raven, no longer menacing, perched on a sunlit windowsill. Beneath it, a stick figure in a Homburg held a tiny girl's hand. Crayon sunbeams radiated outward. At the bottom, in wobbly capitals, "Thank you for stopping the hungry. Love, Lilibet." Poirot's eyes misted. He pinned the drawing above the mantel, beside a photograph of his brother. The raven went on the shelf, wings now open as if in flight. George cleared his throat. "Shall I bring coffee, sir?" "Oui, and the petits fours from Whittimer. We celebrate small victories." The valet withdrew. Poirot opened his notebook, the same one from the train, and turned to the final page. He uncapped his fountain pen and wrote in his precise hand, Case: Blackthorn Impalement. Resolution: 14th November, 1888. Perpetrator: Dr. M. Finch, hanged. Through to February 1889. Accomplice: C. Wren, 7 years. Penal servitude victim: Lord A. Blackthorn. Death by mechanical spike. Catalepsy-induced witness: Miss Lilibet Blackthorn. Age 7. Revived subject motive: exposure of illegal reanimation experiments. Method: clockwork, automaton, compound V, locked room illusion. Red herrings, seances, vanishing corpse, ghostly footsteps. Lesson: the past cannot be rewound, but the future can be set right. The grey cells triumph. The raven flies free. He closed the book, placed it in the drawer with the others. The cog on his chain gave a soft click as he rose. He crossed to the window. Brussels lay under a blanket of snow, church bells tolling the hour. No ticking, no hungry clocks, only the gentle hush of a city at peace. A second knock. George returned with the tray. "Sir, a telegram." Poirot slit it open. Japp's blunt script. Finch executed 8 a.m. No confession. Child safe. Raven grounded. J. Poirot folded the paper, slipped it beneath the crystal dish. "C'est fini." He poured coffee, selected a petit four, pistachio his favourite, and raised it in silent toast to the raven, to the child, to the manor that would never again devour its own. Outside, snow began to fall, soft as feathers. In Dornhouse, far across the channel, the new library stood complete. Sunlight poured through tall windows onto shelves of children's books, no occult tomes, no forbidden science. On the mantel, the doll's house clock remained frozen at noon. Lilibet, now 8, sat cross-legged on the rug, teaching a kitten to chase a blue ribbon. Evelina watched from the doorway, locket open, the miniature of her stepdaughter catching the light. The kitten pounced. Lilibet laughed, a sound like bells after rain. In the garden, the jasmine had begun to climb the new trellis, its scent drifting through open windows. The roses were dormant, but their canes were strong. Come spring, they would bloom. And in the attic, sealed, forgotten, a single brass lever lay in a dust sheet. It would never move again. The spike was silent. The raven was free. The child was home. Far away in Brussels, Poirot finished his coffee, adjusted his moustache, and turned to the morning paper. A headline caught his eye. "Mysterious disappearance in Paris. Locked room, no trace." He smiled, reached for his pen, and opened a fresh notebook. The grey cells stirred. Another clock was ticking.